almost had to ask George for technical assistance. I was like, why is my computer not getting power? And I was like, because they actually didn't plug it in.
It helps when you plug it in.
Just say the Pledge of Allegiance.
I just texted him too, because I know he's coming.
Say it backwards.
There he is. Right on time.
Right on
Guy
time.
is timely.
We were gonna say the pledge very slowly.
There's nothing but time.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, your timing was off. But they're done.
Drive around a couple middle buildings.
Okay, I will call the Thursday, November 21st Southbury Board of Selectmen regular meeting 2019 to order at 7 p.m. If we could have the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. First up is public comments. If you state your name and please limit it to 3 minutes.
Kathy DeCurley, Flag Swamp Road, and I'd like to leave this as part of a record. At the September 5th, 2019 Board of Selectmen meeting, Mr. Sean Murphy of Southbury made a public comment. He spoke about the Republican Party primary candidates, and he said he was, quote, appalled at what was going on politically, and that he, quote, was being attacked on Facebook by her social media goon squad. He continued, quote, the people misbehaving would soon find out firsthand what I'm really about. When Mr. Murphy's time to address the board expired, I immediately addressed the board. Please let it be known that I spoke for a little over a minute and my statements were made without malice. In my comments to the board, I said, quote, what exactly was meant by the threat he just gave the town? Having only a few seconds to compose my comments, I did not use the best wording. This past week, I received by certified mail a cease and desist letter from the lawyers representing Mr. Murphy. The letter demands, at the next Board of Selectmen meeting, I unequivocally revoke my prior offending comments, and anything less would not be deemed sufficient. The letter continues to say, if I don't affirmatively act to retract my prior comments, Mr. Murphy will pursue all available legal remedies against me. Therefore, I would like to amend my public comments from the September 5th, 2019 Board of Selectmen meeting. I would like them to say, what exactly did Mr. Murphy mean when he said the people misbehaving would soon find out firsthand what I'm really about? Thank you for your time and the opportunity to address this matter.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy.
Any other public comment? Any other public comment? Joe?
I'm Joe Ruggiero, 245 Skyview Drive. I was just going to say thank you to Jennifer for her service on the Board of Selectmen. And I understand Art O'Neill's not running, so maybe you have some other avenues to pursue. And I think it was Jody Rell who only served on the Board of Education in Brookfield, and then she ended up as the lieutenant governor and governor, so you never know what can happen anyway.
Very kind of you. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Joe.
Any other public comment?
I thought Maeve was going to do it.
How are you? Rich Bartz, I live in Heritage Village. I want to talk about a couple of neighbors who have some difficulties traveling, and I specifically to church. One of my neighbors, I used to see her every Sunday, and we'd wave and talk, and she would get on the bus, and then I'd see her 2 or 3 hours later getting off the bus. I hadn't seen her for a few months. And then I went to a lunch at the senior center, saw her there. We spoke, and I asked her about going to church. And she said to me, well, I haven't been going because the bus doesn't run anymore on Sunday. And I said, no, how long? She said, a long time. I said, so what do you do? How do you get there? I don't go. She doesn't have a car. She can't drive. I don't go. So, I mean, do you ask any friends? And she said to me, sometimes her son, who lives like in Woodbury or someplace like that, takes her. And I said, how frequently? Oh, just once in a while. So you don't go to church much? She said, and her response was, well, the Lord will forgive me because I've spent my whole life going every Sunday until now. So the plea I'm making is to see what you could do to provide that Sunday bus. I know the senior center used to have activities on Sunday. People would take the bus to church, would get lunch, and sometimes it was either bingo or a movie afterwards, and that doesn't happen anymore. And I think that kind of activity is really important to a lot of people in the village and seniors in general who need help getting back and forth to places. Thank you.
Thanks, Rich.
Thanks, Rich.
Any other public comment? Any other public comment? Any other public comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll go on to presentations of SWOT analysis. We have Pete Rickler and Lisa Pollock here with us.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thanks for having us. I know Cindy sent out a copy of the SWOT analysis on, I think it was Monday afternoon, asking if anybody had any questions. So we are here to try and answer whatever questions you might have.
Does Jeff really have 15 direct reports? I just saw that, I was just curious. It seemed like a high number, but yeah, it's true.
That would be all the department heads.
Yeah.
A lot of people.
It is.
Did you guys speak to all the department heads? Okay. I just asked because in the intro it says who you interviewed, but later on it seemed to indicate that there was discussion with department heads, so.
Yes.
Just curious.
Did you speak to employees in the various departments or no?
No, we spoke to the members of that.
There's a lot in here. It's like hard to read because there's so many suggestions and recommendations. Not sure how we would go about implementing all of those in a timely fashion.
Well, as you can see on the, I believe it's on the last page, that, 2019, 2020, it does take some time to implement that.
I don't remember seeing a time frame in here. But, oh, yeah, there is a note at the top of that section. So you're seeing this as kind of
This is an ongoing process.
2019 is almost over, so it's a year.
So on the back is the, on page 10 is the key HR priorities moving forward. And we could try to get some kind of a closer timetable on that when we think we can get that done, right?
Who do you report to within Southbury, Peter? Jeff directly?
Yeah,
That would make 16.
that's right.
Yeah. That is a
Now it's
lot.
even higher.
So here, if you
So one of the key priorities is establishing you guys as the human resource department. So what's the current function, and then what do we envision moving to, and on what timeline?
Well, we're here, and we suggest that recommend that we be the HR department, but that involves a lot. And one of our recommendations is to use the technology that we have and provide to our clients as far as payroll and just human resource management software to help it be a one-stop shop for payroll, for performance management, and a number of other things. That's not being used at this point, but we hope to get there.
So one of the first things we're doing when we engage with a client is the SWOT analysis. It's not an audit per se. It's used to help us become that HR department. So we look at everything that the town is doing, where the strengths are, where the weaknesses are, where the opportunities and the threats, and it's a collaborative effort. So once we gather all the data, then we establish our key priorities. It takes about 9 months for us to be fully up and running with the department, because there is a lot in this document. So we'll be establishing processes. We've done some, and we have more to do. And we're establishing Pete as the go-to guy for anything and all HR, so the employees who know who they are and they come to him. So there is work to do. We've done a lot, and we have more to do. So it's about a nine-month process. We're about 6-7 months into it, and I think we're making good progress.
Has this document been shared with any of the department heads, and if so, I'm curious what comments they have?
It has not been shared.
Not the
with
SWOT
department,
analysis,
no.
no.
Just wondering.
And that's typical. We generally work with either the selectmen, or if we're in a regular a town with a mayor, we work with the mayor. In a organization, corporate-wise, we work with usually a CFO, CEO, and they decide how they want to share this with department heads.
So there's a few items in here listed as threats, but seem like for most of them, they're not difficult fixes. Is that something that you guys would be like sort of assisting and monitoring to bring those into compliance, or is that something that, you know, the report's done and now it's up to the town? Like, what's the process? I'm just curious. Like,
Great question, thank you. We're intimately involved with any remediation or corrections or changes that we need to make. Threats generally fall into Department of Labor compliance issues, and that's why we call them threats. Most of them are easy to fix. It's just changing a process or implementing something, but we absolutely are working with the town to do this. So this is not a handoff. This is a document that Pete uses when he's here working with the team.
Like, when you look at the conduct preventing sexual harassment training for managers and supervisors, we have been doing that, we do that, but it's a threat we need to keep up with.
Right, and there's a new law.
Right.
That we have until it's late next year, that everybody has to conduct this. And so the state of Connecticut has put together very strict guidelines as to what that training has to encompass. So we've created that training, and we'll certainly be ready to implement that.
So I think we want to make sure we know that that threat doesn't mean that there's something wrong. In every instance that there's something not being done correctly at this time, but it's just a threat.
Right, something that could get you in trouble if not addressed.
Yep. Mike?
So I had a question, because I didn't really see a rationale in the recommendation in the termination and offboarding section regarding changing the charter that would allow, I'm just reading as for, it's recommended to implement a change to the town's charter, sections 310 and 402, to no longer require all terminations to be approved by the Board of Selectmen. all non-union employees should be treated as at-will employees, with the first selectman in consultation with the human resources having the ability to terminate an employee for cause or performance issues. This will likely improve individual performance, employee relations, and morale. So I guess my question is why? What's the rationale?
Why make the recommendation?
Yeah, why that recommendation? Because having been an employer in private sector for a long time and being somebody who had hiring and firing decisions, consolidating that into the hands of the few seems to go against all the business practices I've been taught for years for such a serious issue. So I'm just curious as to the background on that.
Typically in private organizations,
Mhm.
with the let's take union people out
You're
of
right.
the
Yeah, of course.
conversation for now, that every employee, with the exception of very high-level members of senior management who may have an employment agreement or contract, everybody else is an employee at will. And as you know, that allows the employer to, or the employee to terminate that relationship at any time for any reason or no reason at all.
As long as it's legal.
Right.
Correct. And through my conversations since I've been here, it's become apparent to me that there's a feeling of being, as a manager, or even in Jeff's position, of being handcuffed. That when, let's say Jeff and HR and the department head want to terminate somebody, and everybody weighs in, and I play a completely objective role. And we're not able to, we wouldn't be able to go forward with that action without bringing it in front of the board and getting 4 of 5 members to agree. If that fails, and the employee then finds out, as I understand it's pretty easy to do, that that process has taken place, and you've got a poor performer or even worse, now you've got someone who potentially sees that, for lack of a better way of putting it, I've got a job for life unless I do something incredibly heinous. And that can have a really adverse effect on morale.
I appreciate the explanation. I don't necessarily think I agree with that rationale. Having been in it, like I said, having worked I work for a public charity now, so I've been walking both lines, and one, we have limited terms, so it's not a job for life, because another 6 people could make a different decision at some point. But 2, I'd be more concerned as an employee that one person had the job, because we don't have a town that hires a CEO, a chief executive to run our town. We have an elected official and a system of checks and balances across, like most government type of bodies do. So I'd be much more comfortable as an employee, because when I was younger, I was more the employee, if there was a body of people making a decision who have been entrusted by the citizens of our town to always take the best interest of the government and the residents to heart, to have this body doing it, with consultation certainly from an HR, consultant and department in doing so. I never had an HR department until my current job, so it's like eye-opening to me. So I'm not sure that I appreciate the recommendation. I'm not sure I agree with that rationale, because I view it the opposite. I believe that having a body of with different perspectives and different opinions wouldn't make you think that you had a job for life. It would actually say, I have a responsibility to 6 people who are elected in this town. They take their job seriously, because I could say, even when we disagree, every one of us here, and I'm sure as we move forward, whoever's sitting here takes this responsibility seriously, would make you want to make sure you're doing your job. Because the potential threat is that you don't have a job for life, because there are 6 people that, if there is cause, even though they're at will, generally it would be legal and for some cause, performance or otherwise. And the other concern is the liability could potentially put on the town, that if a first selectman acts without any other support, with or without consultation, it sort of consolidates power a bit that I wouldn't be comfortable with, I think. But that's sort of my point of view. Brad, you appreciate that explanation.
The rationale was four. The first selectman, the department head, and, at minimum, and HR. So.
That's right. Even in my current company now, anytime we make a decision to let someone go, our leadership committee, which is sort of, I view it as our version of a board of selectmen, we get this, it's actually 6 of us, we get together with our CEO and we have a discussion and a conversation, and it's a little different because we're not a government body, we don't have to vote, but we have the conversation, and ultimately in that case, we're a 501c3, so the CEO does make the decision, but it's done, really, we've never done it in my time there. There's never been something where if the majority of us disagreed, that it happened. So that's my 2 cents on it, but I appreciate that.
No, I appreciate that.
What does the charter require now? I can't recall. How many votes if you wanted?
I believe it's 4 or 5.
Five of the 6.
I thought it was 5, yeah, it's not
Well,
4.
4 of the 5, 5 of the 6.
Yeah, if you take Jeff out, 4 of the 5.
Right.
Is that for both cause and not cause? Is there a difference? Like, that might be an area to look at.
Yeah, that's a little different.
I think what we're finding, some of the problem, you know, I mean, you can look at the chart and you can say, okay, if it's a department head, it's 5 of the 6 for the department head. But what we run into is when we're dealing with, say, the people who are, especially like if they're part-time seasonal help, you know, things like this where you know, you have a problem with someone and you're like, okay, can we terminate them? And you have to wait for a board meeting, which could be in, you know, a number of weeks, and it's, you know, there's a potential liability. So it just is making it a little easier to take care of those issues, which, you know, again, you would have to have justification through, and I'm not saying this is something we're voting to do, but there's much more, that's kind of what I think we're looking at. Is it too stringent to, you know, hey, by the way, and one of the reasons for that, it came around where, so if you hire someone, a young person, and let's say there's an issue, and they are not doing well. If you call it before this board, it's public, and it's kind of out there, and you know, you have a 17 or 18-year-old, 16-year-old person who just made a mistake, maybe not really learned how to work properly, but you don't want to put it out on a record for that person. I think that was part of what this thought process is what do you do about that, where you can say, look at the highway, you know, John Cattell has a problem with it, with your work, and I've reviewed it, we've reviewed it with our HR people, and we're going to be terminating you. We're going to let you go. Because if we bring it here to the board, that young person is now on the record. And you really don't want to do that, I think, with, you know, we make.
Do we have a dual standard, like one standard for department heads and another standard for regular employees?
could be.
Is that what we're talking about?
That could be.
Yeah,
It would be a charter change,
Depending on
but
the level.
Right, that is something I thought, right, levels of part-time, you know, maybe there's a way to look at that, but I don't know.
within the probationary period, maybe another
Yeah, and that's a
situation.
year, right? Probationary period is a year.
Right, but right now, the probationary period, when you think about it, really doesn't mean anything, because they're
Yeah.
hired. I can't say, hey, this is not working. You know, what does it really mean? I mean, does a probationary period mean that you can terminate them with a, you know, or do you have, if to go to the board, it's the same thing as if they were
Yeah, I
full-time?
mean, if I can speak just from a legal perspective and from talking about the at-will approach, or law, that probation doesn't really mean anything here. Because the fact is that when you're at will, you can terminate somebody for any reason, no reason,
Right.
whether you're in probation or out of probation. So it doesn't make it any easier to terminate somebody when you're in a probationary period versus when you're out. But if Mike, if this helps, you know, Lisa and I have both been in senior HR positions in private industry. And I know from my own experience that if the there's a process I make them go through. I have to sit down with them, I have to hear all the facts. I have to make sure, as HR and being objective, that they're doing this for the right reasons. Because the last thing that I want, and that we want here in town, is to take an action that, although legally you can terminate them, assuming it's not for discrimination purposes, but anything that's gonna put the town at risk for potential legal action. So that's what we do, and that's what we do in private industry, and that's what we would do here as well.
So I think we're a ways away from that.
Yeah.
But I think I think if we get near to there, we, to that point, and it's considered, we can have conversations. And, you know, if you're not comfortable with it, you can, meet with the HR people on an explanation and be comfortable. And we're not here to decide that tonight.
Right. No, that's good, thank you.
What they're proposing is fairly normal and common in my experience in industry. I mean, you don't usually terminate people through a whole board of selectmen or something like that.
Well, that's been
It's
my
usually
understanding.
more along the lines of what you're talking about. In fact, I've been in companies where you didn't even have HR, and the manager of the department could, on their own, decide to terminate people. Just because they, for whatever reason.
Well, unfortunately, in those instances, you do increase the risk significantly that there may be
Right,
legal action.
no, I'm not saying we wanna do
Right,
that,
right,
but
right.
I mean, I've been in that position where I was a manager, and I had that ability to hire or fire anyone I chose for any reason. I
Well,
never got sued, never had a problem. Just-
My understanding has been that this is, compared to other towns, this is unique. in
What we
that-
have now is unique?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
interesting, yeah.
Well, I think part of the process, the intention was to have an HR function. And that HR function is basically taking some of the HR management side away from this board and away from the first selectman, where if there's a problem I have with an individual, I have to go to HR and say, I'm having a problem, my manager's having a problem, this is the issue, how do we address this? Where we have a professional who says, okay, you need to document what's going wrong, document that you worked with, and we have done that, we've worked with employees, we say, okay, you know, we don't hate you, we just wanna make sure we're on the same level, and it's worked. I think it has actually, though it's not made public here in this boardroom, I feel free to speak, I mean, your own mind, I don't.
No, absolutely, and I can tell you without being able to give you specific statistics, I can tell you, and I think I can probably speak for Lisa, but so correct me if I'm wrong, that in private industry, when managers come to us and say, I wanna terminate somebody, much more often than not, we end up not terminating them because the manager has not done what they're supposed to do to make sure that this is the right thing to do, and it's not therefore going to put the town at risk. So whether it means that the manager hasn't, as you pointed out, doesn't have the appropriate documentation regarding all the instances that they're talking about in terms of where the employee's not performing or whatever else they may have done, or putting somebody on a performance improvement plan as sort of a last step before you get to termination. There's a whole host of things that can be done and are very often done, so I think it would be the minority of the time, unless somebody has done something so egregious that it warrants termination immediately. And those tend to be a select minority of the cases.
I think you would find historically, though, the other towns, because they don't do what we do, they have an HR function in existence. And we haven't. We used to have a personnel committee, which was made up of several members of the Board of Selectmen and maybe an HR person with experience. So I think it's definitely time for you all to look at this.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to say that, not that we're gonna sit here and discuss specifics, but I have seen this work already with, okay, to the manager, have you tried this, and bring everybody in and say, okay, these are the expectations, and sometimes people are like, I didn't realize that was, okay, so now we'll track that, and it worked well, because the last thing I think any manager wants to do is go search for another, and go through that effort again.
Money
You know,
employees.
so I think we should think about,
Yeah, and I think I'm a big fan of professional development and improvement plans. I think it's an HR best practice that whether you're in the public sector like we are or in your private sector, it makes a lot of sense. It both protecting you from liability, so you have a paper trail that you've tried to improve the person, and just frankly, the worst thing anyone ever has to do is fire someone, even if it's their cause. It is the worst conversation to have. That said, I think that we've learned overall that necessarily running a private business doesn't translate well to running a government body, and all the best practices of private business don't necessarily translate well to government. So I just want us to be cautious of that at times.
yeah. Anything else?
If we were going to change something like this officially, we'd have to do it through the charter, correct?
Yes.
And that's a process.
Yep.
Missed it
Well,
by
I'm
that
hoping
much.
they're
Yeah.
here, I mean.
Jennifer,
the
do you like
any
to
chart-
chair that committee?
I'm hoping they're here still here at the next charter revision, and, that we understand, that they understand,
Yep.
so this,
That's a long way.
like I said, doesn't mean this is something that's gonna happen tomorrow. This is just
Yeah, it's an
what
idea.
they're seeing and what they're professional.
Appreciate it.
Well, on the other hand, though, I don't think you have to wait 5 years to do a charter review. You could, for special cases, maybe this is one, launch a charter revision process at any time. Correct? Am I correct, or am I wrong?
You're correct.
You could launch it at any time, but it would be
Anytime.
open to any revision.
That's right.
Yeah, you can tell that, we could form a charter revision commission tomorrow and say, hey, we want you to change section 310 of the charter. And then they could go and change every other section of the charter, and not change 310, and, it's a process.
I think
but-
we need to breathe a little.
So,
I mean, like I said, it is working, and I would say that we are probably, any HR, if it was to get to a point where termination or separation of employment, I'm sure that these people would have guided us through the paper trails and everything else. You're just looking at whoever's in trying to operate this government doesn't necessarily get bogged down with, maybe that the department heads are one thing, but I will say this, seasonal workers, do you really want, you see my example of what could happen, and I've got to go to the board, and we have to say, we need to vote on this 17-year-old kid, and it's on, and now it's public record, and frankly, there are, as we hire police officers, and you get into backgrounds, and you're looking at stuff, and I have seen things that potentially damage a young person who, let's face it, at 16, were we really completely front the,
I was perfect.
me too, I'll
Just
say
kidding,
that.
Ed.
So that's just something we should think about when they do the analysis, what came to light.
And the only other thing, Jeff, that I would mention is that, any good HR person will tell you that from an employee perspective, our job is to help give them, each of them, every opportunity for success. And that's one of the big things that we look at when somebody is even coming to us contemplating termination. Have they had every opportunity to succeed in that job? Or is there something the town could have done differently? If that's the case, then let's do that and give them an opportunity to show that they can succeed. That will work sometimes, sometimes it won't.
Well, certainly if a manager comes to me all of a sudden one day and says, I want Bill gone now, I'm gonna be like, well, what do you mean? This is the first I've heard of it.
Yeah, it's not that easy.
Right, it's not that easy, and but by the time you go through all that process, it may be that the best for, and then they would go to you and say, look, the best thing for us here, you here, I think, is to possibly reconsider working for us. But anyway, we're a ways off from that, but, anything else of them?
I had a question on your proposal for succession planning. I just think it's kind of impractical because people can just leave on any short notice, and how do you plan for that? And it's very difficult, I think, to try to pick somebody. I mean, I don't know, you tell me what your thoughts are on that before I put words in your mouth, but, because you made a specific suggestion about planning for succession. Now, we have an issue right now with our IT director planning to leave, but he's told us, and he's leaving in like August or so we're already making plans to replace him. But that doesn't always happen, where you know ahead of time that someone's gonna leave.
Right, and I think that's the biggest reason to have a formal succession plan, because you don't know. Somebody could walk out on you at any point, somebody could get hit by a bus. And you wanna make sure that you've got some bench strength there. And that if you have somebody, and you don't
So you're-
necessarily have to tell an individual that you are the chosen one, should the person in charge leave. But you're looking at, does this next senior person, do they have what it takes to do the job of the department head?
I don't know.
If they don't, where are the strengths, where are the weaknesses, where do we need to develop them? So if and when that time comes, they'll be ready, and the town won't be caught behind.
Well, to do that, you'd have to hire people specifically with that goal in mind, that they could step up to the lead role, and I don't believe in most of our departments we have that right now.
Or we could do a better job of cross-training.
Well, if you're looking at like the finance department, I don't know that anyone there would be ready to step into Dan's shoes.
No, but somebody from the finance department did move over to be tax collector when the tax collector passed.
So maybe something like.
So something
yeah.
like that would be helpful. I mean, finance is a
know.
different,
Doesn't necessarily have to come from that specific department.
cross-training's valuable to everybody.
There's no doubt, but I'm just thinking that practicalities of actually coming up with succession plans would be very difficult to make.
They're not easy to do.
No.
Especially as people are being more fluid and moving jobs more often. We would target only certain jobs where you would have the most risk if you had a hole, where things would come to a halt if somebody left. So your senior managers, your department heads, that's usually the level you start thinking about succession.
So I think this is not, we're gonna do this next month. I think this is, something for us to give thought to, and again, maybe it's not succession plan for, someone from Public Works to become the director of Public Works, but that type of thing. But it may also make careful consideration. So if somebody was to leave a department, not necessarily the manager, and you were going to hire somebody for this specific job, but you may look more closely at their skill sets, and would they be able to develop should this other department head leave or another person leave? Could they? So between cross-training and thinking of the job, that job is just specifically this job, you'd probably say to yourself, now, we're looking to hire someone, and we go HR and we get the description, and then while you're interviewing, it's gonna be like, okay, would this person be able to step up enough? Maybe not do the job for permanent, but would they be able to step up enough, be able to handle a short-term?
On an interim basis.
Correct. Maybe they're not ready to do the whole full-blown job at that level, because there comes sometimes that expertise, they're just not going to. But I think it would give clear direction on the hire of that position, rather than, yeah, that person can take notes and do the filing. Well, what if we needed them to also do some tax researches or whatever? Could they step up? Maybe they can't do the whole budgeting, but could they do that, and would they help out work? And that's what I think maybe what we're looking, not tonight, but.
Well, because in theory, you could argue that we're not necessarily talking about somebody leaving the town. Let's say a department head becomes ill and has to have some surgery and is going to be out for a fairly significant amount of time. You want to know, is there somebody in that department that can, as you said, that can step up on an interim basis and fill that role?
So I just, these are just thoughts, and I think we're a long ways away, but I want to make sure.
Along those lines, and I think another part of that too is how well documented what each of these people, what they do is, like the practices and procedures in each department, and like, so if someone did fall ill tomorrow and we needed someone to go in there and sort of fill in, is it easy to understand what it is this function does? And is that papered and documented where it's all put together, that we know exactly what this person does, to make it easier to find sort of that next person?
So that, Jason, this kind of folds all into what I was a little bit trying to do was document processes and procedures so that should someone go into that department and you pull up the procedure for a building permit, the documentation of how it goes, that you could probably look at that and say, okay, I see how that flows, I see what we need, I shouldn't be missing that step. And I mean, that's gonna take, that's a long ways off project that we've been trying to teach some of our own, like Goshen's been working with documenting process and procedures on the third floor. Again, until you know how you do this, until I know how this person does their job and that person and how that comes together, which a lot of times people don't really realize it's not quite what you think it is. But then you could start documenting. So if somebody should say, so if I should, if KM was, and now we have a floater who helps KM, and then the floater goes to the tax office, and wherever that floater is needed, the true use them as a floater. Meanwhile, they're learning the tax office and they're learning this, so that they should be able to go in. So now if you were to say, okay, someone's coming in for a building permit, and she's not there up there on the third floor every day, you should be able to look at the documentation and follow it. So that would give us kind of the cross-training. It's not just the cross-training, there's other pieces to it.
I have
Okay.
one
George?
final comment. Every organization I've been involved with has some sort of a management committee where the top managers meet with the CEO and they talk about issues. And it's always struck me as a little bit odd that the town doesn't have anything like that in a formal manner. Maybe it's something that we should consider doing. I mean, having you and maybe 5 or 6 of your top people as a group that meets, I don't know, once a month, once every 2 weeks, to talk about things that they may want to talk between each other about, and maybe you could be part of that discussion. I don't know, it's just pretty standard to have like a management committee in a large organization, and I think we're large enough that maybe that's something we could talk about.
Well, we meet with, I mean, we can, I think this is a little deeper than what we're looking.
Yeah, this is not part of this.
It's part of this.
Although when
We
I
can talk
read this,
about
it did come to mind.
But
I
I-
said, you know, when I saw you had 15 people, I'm thinking, wow, that's a lot of individual lines on a org chart, you know, it's a lot. So I thought, well, maybe a slightly different structure would be considered. Just a thought.
So anyway, I just wanted to get them here, so you know, it's been a while, and you want, I'm sure the board wanted to know what was going on and where we were at. And so if there's any other questions.
I was just gonna ask, since they're here, one of the things we talked about, I think, May, June, when you guys started, was doing a compensation study. And I'm just curious where we are with that and what the thoughts are on that.
We're pretty far along on it. One of the things that we're looking at, starting to look at now, is we want to look at, specifically look at job descriptions. We want to look at that positions are in, making sure that they're in the appropriate grades. And that's
do you think the time frame is on that?
I would think that,
No one's gonna hold you to the day, but.
Write it down.
I would think in the next several weeks that we should be able to complete that.
Let's remember, we're headed into the
Right.
holiday season, so I
I was
don't
just-
wanna not.
I mean, I thought about it as we went through this, like, you know, benefits are mentioned. I was curious if compensation came up at all in any of your discussions with folks.
With the department heads, it did. I mean, there's certainly, as you can imagine, a number of people who feel that, people on their staff are underpaid or they are underpaid. And I wasn't surprised by that.
Nobody told them they were overpaid.
I mean, it's rare as you can imagine that you. get
Board of
somebody
Selectmen's overpaid.
And you ask them, do you think you're fairly compensated? And you're not gonna get too many people who say, absolutely. So,
Thanks.
So we're moving along with all that, and, are we all set?
Thank you.
Thank
for your
you.
time.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you.
Appreciate you spending the night. So I think we're past the new business SWOT analysis. Announcements and correspondence. Yes, sir?
Jeff, before we, since new business is early on the agenda, we need to add, Betsy sent an email and she reminded me before the meeting, I'll make sure we add to the agenda the closing the road next Thursday. And
For the
new
TV
business is next, so that's why I'm
So
bringing it
let's
up.
add that to
So
the
I'd
agenda.
Make a motion to add the
I'll second
closure of the
it.
road on
Second, made and
Thanksgiving.
seconded. Any discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And it carries.
I
So
don't
we'll
have
bring
the
up
resolution.
The resolution, thank you, Jason, for that. Resolved that the Board of Selectmen authorizes the closing of Main Street South from 7:30 Main Street South to Main Street North on Thursday, November 28th, 2019, between the hours of 8 a.m. and 10:30 a.m. for the turkey trot.
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Made and second. Any discussion? Anybody want to? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? And it carries, and we'll go close the road on Thanksgiving. Okay. Announcements and correspondence you have. You have your reports in front of you. Any questions? And we'll move on to the consent agenda. I have a motion.
So moved.
Have a second, Mike? Thank you.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Method.
I'm going to be abstaining as the Burr Road property is a current customer, and my company is currently marketing the property.
Okay, thank you. Well, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
Abstain. Thank you. Minutes of our November 7th, 2019 regular meeting.
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Do I have a second, Mike? Thank you.
I'll second.
Any discussion on the minutes? Just for fun.
Very bossy.
Any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And it carries. Unfinished business on the tax abatement.
There's been quite a bit of discussion about the tax abatement issue, specifically the suggestion that we add an asset test to the senior circuit breaker program, the one that the town administers. I would like to hold this off for to the next meeting. I think we need a little more time to sort through it. I've discussed it with the people on the tax abatement committee, and I've discussed it with Cindy and Jeff, and we just need a little more time to sort through it, unless you have some comments on it at this point, from what you know. I would suggest we hold off for the next meeting.
And the October 2019 letters have gone out, so there's not if we do it now, otherwise you won't get into it this year. It's already,
Apply for next year.
right, so, all right?
Yeah, I would also like talk to I'm not sure who's on, is the assessor on the committee?
Mike,
Yeah.
we're having potentially a meeting with him next Tuesday.
Yeah, we talked to him too, because they're gonna
Yeah,
have to, I don't want it to be too cumbersome of a process, like, see what the process is like, and
Apparently,
It's
it's
gonna have to
already
go through
being
him.
done for the state-funded fuel program. So there's already a process that people are going through.
that's good.
But yeah, you don't want to make it too difficult, too stringent, or set the tax or the asset level so low that
That's
nobody
why I say just
qualifies.
include him, because he'll have to
And he's looking for
administer it.
Yeah, and Mike is looking for specific definition of what, is it resident, is it, ownership, is it, so.
There's a
it
lot
can
of
be-
questions.
Yeah,
Yeah, we're not quite ready to make a recommendation on that yet.
so you want, we entertain a motion to table?
Do we have to, or?
Motion to postpone to the next meeting.
Okay.
I'll second that, or
Thank you.
whatever.
Mike's the seconder
Mike
tonight.
is gonna second, will you first it, Jason?
Yeah.
I made the motion.
I second motions.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. All right, first selectmen's report. Jason, you were there, this morning at Pierce Hollow Village with, met SBA over at, Grace Meadows.
Grace Meadows.
Okay, sorry. They're looking, they'd like, if you could, if anybody in the public, not just the Board of Selectmen, would write a letter to the state and federal representatives that represent us here in town, both federal, to see if we can get the money right now is still, number one, can they get the money? And number two, that it's not multi-generational, that there's a specific need here. Plus, the fact that the senior housing, that property can only be used for senior housing. It can't be multi-generational. So they'd like a little help in pushing this and getting word out. And whether you're a private citizen or public official, and if you want, contact our office. I think there was a list that was out there today.
They provided a list of various state and federal legislators, and I think, I didn't actually see the list, but other people to contact would probably be the governor's office and I forget which department. I mean, the real problem is there's a lot of problems, but the initial hurdle, and we all did a letter a couple years ago too, trying to get around this, is the state funding. Like, you gotta, the state won't even open up its funds before you can even get to the next level, and this is a special act of our legislature for this specific purpose. And it's an important project for our town, so I think we should do whatever we can to try and push the state along on that. And I'm not sure what else we can do. I mean, our letter was a few years ago. Maybe we can look at doing another sort of Board of Selectmen resolution and letter, like we did last time along. It's a new administration now. It was,
So we'll look that letter
it was
up.
with Governor Malloy the last time, so I could look back at that if
So
you want me to.
just to be clear that, I've talked to DAS about this. The survey's up there. There was a question about the survey. It's up there. Everything is pretty much in place. Nothing, it can transact quickly. It is under state statute for senior housing, so it can't, there was a rumor that, out there that somebody else was ready to buy it, and DAS said, we would know, and there's nobody ready to buy that, and it can't because it's state statute, and it just, it's just sitting there, ready when funding, if it comes along, when it comes along, it's just sitting there.
Well, yeah, I think we'd also, we should have a conversation, and certainly Jeff, you should have a conversation with our other state representatives, so there's a coordinated approach to do what we can to push this possible to the governor. Certainly, I think a letter is great, but I think a letter is more symbolic than anything. I think we should talk to Senator Berthel and Representative O'Neill and Representative Labriola and come up with a coordinated approach and get a meeting. And do whatever we can to try to get that meeting so we can do anything within reason to force the issue.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the problem is multi-generational and getting the money to, you know, well, we don't have to discuss what the
Yep.
state is trying to do, so. Radio refresh is, people, they're gonna make a field trip to Norwich, Connecticut, to talk about the process and what they did, and a kind of a fact-finding mission on that. The good news is the parking lots, last one over here was paved just today. They just need to do the curbing on it, but we got that done before snowfly, so we're glad about that. Let's remember the tree lighting is coming up December 7th.
Yes.
And please, if you, it'd be a nice time if everybody can make it out there. Also, Jennifer, on behalf of the Board of Selectmen, we'd like to thank you for your work over the past 4 years and your commitment to the community and the results you've had with your, we do appreciate that. We'd asked everybody to please stay, don't run away after we adjourn for cake. And I know your friend Noreen wanted to be here, and but she's not. She's getting a little sicker during the day, but we certainly.
Sorry to hear that.
I know she tried everything to be here, but she's out there watching, which I doubt. We wish her well too, and rest. There's punch list on the list on the lights yet, but we've made good progress. But there's just some punch lists to get finished up. Old Navy is having a soft opening Saturday. Ribbon cutting. We don't know when yet.
Yeah,
I know you're
They did a
kidding.
soft open already. They're doing their
Soft
official,
opening, I don't-
they're doing their official opening on Saturday. That's announced.
Good thing I'm sitting in that office when I know.
So you're saying
all
you were
this.
there? You're saying you were there?
Really? I was wondering who shopped at Old Navy.
Anybody that's got kids.
Okay.
Yes.
It'll come in handy.
Are they doing a
They're
ribbon,
doing giveaways and special stuff on Saturdays.
are they having a ribbon cutting officially, or they're not gonna?
We're
bother
trying to
with
find that out on
I don't know if I saw it,
Saturday.
it's at my report about EDC, because we talked about it last night. I don't know if there's a ribbon.
Well, then we'll start with reports from the liaisons. George?
Usually I don't have a lot to say, but today, that's not the case. A whole bunch of things happened. We had a road study committee meeting today, 2 o'clock, and it was a good meeting. The 5-year project list was approved. I have a copy of it here if anybody wants it. This year, we've done 31 miles of chip sealing, 2.5 miles of cold in place, 1.6 miles of mill and pave, and 0.5 miles of total reconstruction. So out of 125 miles of paved road, we've done 35.6 miles this year, which is pretty amazing. On chip sealing alone, we spent $1.12 million, which is a little higher than the budget, but a lot of that was because we didn't do as much last year because of the bad weather, so some of that money carried over. We talked about the River Road project. That's gonna come up, hopefully for an engineering study soon, so we can see what's involved with the cost of that. You know, that's the road north of Silver Bridge up to the dam. That's sinking or sliding into the river, so it needs a little work. East Flat Hill Bridge was completed. That's really not, there's a whole bunch of bridge projects. So what's happening with the 2.75 million that we've got in the budget for roads? A lot of that's being shifted over to bridges. About $500,000 per year is going over to bridges. IT steering, Ray is leaving in August, as we know. He's recommending that we hire somebody to replace him 60 to 90 days before he departs, so they can have a little bit of a transition. And as a follow-up, the committee is suggesting that we hire Ray on as a consultant, part-time, for another 60 to 90 days to help with the transition. process to the new guy or gal. We purchased 2 new copiers. They're $5,900 each. I think one is in the library and one is in
Third floor.
the 3rd floor, yeah.
It's beautiful.
These are expensive, but they're, according to Ray, they're the lowest per page cost machines you could find. The black and white copy is half a cent a page, and the color copy is 3.9 cents per page, in case you're wondering what it
That's
costs.
amazing.
What?
3.9 for color?
And that's the lowest price you could find, yeah.
That's amazing.
We've got a copier for you.
That's amazing. No, I just.
Amazing
didn't
good or
know.
high? I mean,
No, amazing good.
oh, okay. Well, that's what it's.
Color
that's
is
what-
less than black and white. That's what you just said.
No,
No, 3.9 cents and 0.5 cents for black and white. It's half a cent for black and
cent.
white.
Right, oh, okay,
Yeah.
yeah, sorry.
She takes back everything she
I
Yeah,
do.
it's not amazing anymore.
No, it is actually still very good.
We went ahead and, based on the recommendation of the committee, purchased the extra cyber insurance from HD Seeger. It's $1,700 a year. And one of the nice features of that insurance policy is they offer a lot of training materials that we can share with employees. Whether they actually take advantage of those materials is another question, but Ray was quite pleased because otherwise he'd have to create the materials himself, and he didn't want to do that. We replaced a police server. It's interesting that the police server was 5 years old, and already the word on it was that it was way obsolete. Like, you really need to replace these things like 3 to 4 years, 4 years max. 5 years is like too long. So just keep that in mind when you're budgeting. You may want to speed up the refresh cycle on some of these servers. Ray purchased a backup internet line, so if our fiber link through CEN goes down, we have a charter cable coax. It's a lot slower, but at least it's there. One of the concerning issues that came up was QSend. That's our website hosting company. They were blocking chunks of IP addresses. They were getting disruption of service attacks. And to stop the attacks, they took whole chunks of IP addresses and said, okay, these people with those addresses can't access the website. Now, what happened was a lot of people in town, John Michaels being one, were blocked from accessing the website. Now, we don't know how many other people were blocked, but I just wanted to make people aware that that happened, and I don't know what the fix is. We upgraded Munis, the financial software, to a later version with a plan to replace it with a different product maybe in the next year or so. Cloud storage is going to be functional by mid-February, according to Ray. And iWorks now has an emailing capability, or I don't know if it has it yet or it's going to get it soon, to where when a project is submitted to iWorks, iWorks will send you back a response via email that the project was completed. The one thing I didn't know is we have an internal iWorks system and a citizen iWorks system, and they're different. So somebody in Public Works sees an issue, they can submit a work order through iWorks on a different system than what the citizens use. The other thing I did, this was something Jeff suggested. I attended the Fairfield Hills campus financial meeting in Newtown. And the reason, obviously, you would go to that is to get a sense of what might happen with Southbury Training School. And I have the presentation printed out here. If anybody wants a copy, I can send you a PDF version of it. The takeaway for me is that this is a costly process. And it's something, you know, I always looked at Southbury Training School as an opportunity, but at this point I see it more like a threat because of the cost to remediate and demolish the buildings is enormous. Newtown is estimating that they'll spend about $63 million between when they started and when they finish the project. Is it worth it? I'm sure in time people will see it that way, but right now it's a big drain on Newtown's finances. I think from what I took away in the meeting, Newtown has debt service costs of about $9.5 million right now. mean, that's just what they pay to service the debt. And I don't know how much debt that is, I didn't get into that with them. But they need another 20 million to demolish and remediate the remaining buildings that are on the site. They purchased the property for about 3.9 million, which sounds like a good deal until you get into the cost of what it takes to remediate it. And what I've heard, and I don't have verification on, is that they could have purchased the property from the state, fully remediated and demolished, but they chose, but that was a lot more money, it was more like $30 million, but they chose a cheaper option thinking they could do it themselves. This Fairfield Hills project for Newtown is really a lot of work for them. I mean, it's like almost as much work as running the rest of the town, trying to manage what's going on there. You know, another thing I learned is that developers are just not interested. There's no activity, hardly at all. You know, it's been very quiet. Developers are not interested, probably because it's so expensive to remediate. Another thing I learned is that when they do demolish a building, they only remediate and demolish 3 feet below ground level. So they leave the foundation, whatever's below that 3-foot level, in the ground. So if you want to come into that area and build another building, you've got to go back in there and dig out the last of that foundation and then remediate that area. So it's just a very messy process, this whole thing. Anyway, I can, if you're interested, I'll send you the PDF. You can take a look at it.
Could you share with the Strategic Plan Commission too, since that's one of their objectives?
Would that be John? Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, I was a little surprised that they weren't there. I thought maybe they would be interested to hear.
I'm sure they would have been. I don't know.
Anything else, George?
No, that's it for me.
So I just wanted,
Oh, I do have one other thing, I'm sorry.
Okay, George.
I'd like to add it to other business, the cellular mobile coverage discussion. I'd like to propose forming a small team to take that on, but I could do that under other business, make a motion
You
to do
want
that.
to wait till the next meeting to do that?
Well, we could, or we could do it.
I mean, we're not,
I'm talking about a very small team, so it's me and Kevin, basically.
well, I don't have a problem with the two of you getting together. Do you have to have a formal,
You don't need a formal,
not at this point,
Unless you want to have minutes and agendas and.
go through? Why don't you just get
just
together?
do it. Okay, well, if you're okay with it, we'll just form an ad hoc committee.
Try to help you out here,
If
George.
the
And
two of you
we'll-
want to talk about cell phone coverage, you can.
We can do it, but
When we get ready.
we'll be bringing other people into the conversation from time to time.
Yeah, you
so-
may rethink that. Okay. On the road study, just so you know, we're going out, John can tell us this should be, we're gonna try to, if the weather permits and there's nothing on the road, to get it sooner than it was scheduled to be done, we've moved it up, they drive around the roads to see what the remaining service life is, because right now they look at, they had a rating, and then they put a formula in, if you did this many miles of road, chip sealing, if you did this many miles of road reconstruction, you have a formula that kind of tells you as you go where you're at. We've done so much work on the roads that the roads that need to be finished, you can see the change. They're getting fewer and fewer, and mostly those small outlying roads. So it's not an exact formula, so you don't really know. So you have to reset the needle. So we're looking to we're gonna be doing that so that we reset that needle. Hopefully we'll know before the budget season where that needle is, where our remaining service life and the roads are. Then you can say, you can do an estimate of, you lost a year, but you fixed these roads, so you gained a year. And project that out a little closer for budgeting purposes going forward. So just so, there's, why are we moving it up if you happen to hear about it? That, we want to reset the needle, because I think at this point, they think it's a little over, what, George, 15 or?
Well, I've heard it as high as 16, I've heard it as low as in the high 14s, so,
So we need to know.
yeah, we should. And we targeted back, 3-4 years ago, an RSL of 12 years. So we're doing better than that by quite a bit.
Right. So we want to reset this, so we're gonna be moving that PO up for that. Justin?
So, EDC met last night. Lion's share of the meeting was, Kevin, his first time. He gave us a summary of what he's been up to since he got hired, and there was quite a bit of activity, quite a bit of good information. He put together a little, sort of outline for folks about how and where you can go to start a business in Southbury. So that was all very interesting. I had a chance to meet with him as well and bring him up to date on what the town properties or 94 properties group had done. And he's met with some commercial brokers, he's met with people, general manager of the Heritage Hotel,
He's met with a lot of people.
a lot of people.
Yeah, he's been really,
Been out there, and the committee was very impressed with him. And, you know, he's just getting started, so it's exciting. And he was the one who knew that Old Navy had already opened. He's already met with the Gattos. So it was very, very positive. Other things at EDC included a little bit of discussion about the Southbury app, and the potential to bring the Holocaust Museum here, which is clearly going to be a long-term
yeah.
tuple, but they haven't given up on that. IPOC has not met. We did get some reports from our vendor, FIA. Accounts are all doing very well right now. And last but not least, the senior commission, a little bit of traction on the drivers. The sick ones came back. Apparently there may be a ban or something in their budget request. And that's about it for me.
So just, on Kevin, Bielmar's, with finding efficiencies, I've talked to him a little bit, upstairs about finding are there possible efficiencies of a strategic plan of combining planning and zoning. So one of the things he's going to do, he's gonna try and figure out, because I'm not sure everybody understands or if we really understand where the perception of lack of efficiencies is coming from and what the cause of the difficulties are. So I think he's giving him the task of looking at that and kind of saying, okay, this part of economic development, where's the bottleneck? What seems to be, because I'm hearing third floor talk about some of the things that a contractor or developer does that makes it difficult to move it along for them. So he's going to work with that, because he does have a pretty in-depth knowledge of planning and zoning, and he's not saying you shouldn't do good planning or zoning, but that will be, I think, that's part of what he's gonna start looking at is economic development, is where the bottleneck is and what can be done, and is that gonna really change that, or is it a perception problem where he would be out there saying, Kevin would be, for lack of a better word, cheerleading that we are friendly, this is what we need to do, and this is how we need to do it. So he'll be working, I've asked him, he'll be working on that.
Has he spoken to Bob Laflamme? I think Bob, we'd probably give him an earful about.
He's asked for my contact, for the contact, and I said I will make sure it's okay and get it to him.
Yeah.
Out of respect for Mr. Laflamme. So I don't think there's any, we'll get that, I will make that connection.
I'm sure Bob would be happy to talk to him.
Yeah. Well, Bob is he's a realist too, very realist about what did or did not happen, where his bottlenecks were. And I think, Bob obviously likes this town, he moved in, so I think he'll be very helpful on that end. before that.
I got a question on economic development. Is part of Kevin's job to kind of walk people or handhold people through the system? Because I read his list of all the departments, and it just was daunting. I mean, you have to do wetlands and planning and zoning. It's like, it's daunting. You look at it, and how do I do this? So and I think other towns do that as well, where they assign somebody when a company comes in to help them through the process, to kind of guide them through and work with them. Is that part, so that's
Yes,
part of his
yes,
function? Okay.
Absolutely, that's what he's, part of what he's doing.
Primary.
Right. And he's already sent a list, I forget who's copied, or it was just me, a list of, what's I'm finding good is that he's telling me Old Navy is a soft opening, ribbon cutting.
He's collating it.
Right.
And he's getting plannings on what they work on, what applications, that's what part of this is here.
And he brings.
Somebody wants to
right.
open a home-based Pilates studio in a residential area. IBM is demolishing an in-house kitchen to turn it into more business space or more office space. Taking turf wants to move somewhere on Main Street. So-
Has he spoken to anybody at IBM? I don't even know where you would start.
He has attempted to, but apparently the person that he had as a contact is no longer.
Yeah.
So he's working.
Yeah, he's contacted the person doing the work, but that person is not at liberty. I think he certainly knows, but he can't talk about it. And so they will get the contact with the right person who can talk about it. So, yeah, that's what he's doing.
We can crack IBM open for some development or some tenants moving in. I think that would be I think it would be a great opportunity, but I don't think
Working on
IBM is
that
that
for a long
interested in
time.
it.
But,
I mean, they stay there because of the data center. They just need for
they have the data center. I mean, the good news was that when they committed to a fuel cell for power, that was a pretty big commitment. And they're very particular about their data center, more than I think their office space. And that's, yeah, they want to protect that. That's it?
That's it from my side, yeah.
Jason?
So library met last week. I had a conflict. I was unable to attend. I spoke to Shirley Michaels today. They primarily talked about the budget, which they're going to be finishing up at their next meeting. These were all handed out. Joe Lieberman will be at the library on Monday as part of the Bizzuto Civics Lecture Series. And the topic is, can we return to bipartisanship, which I think is a worthwhile topic.
Jason, will that be recorded?
I don't know, because
'Cause I
I
can't
was
be
looking
there.
at it too. I have a conflict, and it would be a nice thing to go to. I'll ask them.
Justin and I'll make sure we go. Sorry, so easy.
Unbelievable. We have to try and get there now. It should be recorded though. I wonder if they record them, because they do have the devices in there, so.
Yeah, but sometimes the speakers won't.
Don't want it.
Right.
I'm sure,
Maybe we have-
something tells me Joe
We'll try.
don't mind being recorded. Anyways, that's the library. LEPC met last week. Neil Lustig gave a presentation on the opioid crisis. He went through data, statistics as to ODs in the area and around the state, and emergency room calls and things of that nature. And I think the number was, the printout is really tiny, you could barely read it, but I think for Southbury, the number within the last year was 7. And it's something that, obviously is concerning to all of us and to him, and he's keeping an eye on it, and he's going to be working with the schools and SMART and the town and whatnot. We also had a presentation from our new local director overseeing Region 5 from the Red Cross, Eric Huber. We've actually all been getting emails from him, I think, since he's been on, talking about replacing smoke detectors and things like that. He gave a good presentation, which I think we can probably get a copy of and I can circulate. One of the things that he talked about that he said he wanted to sort of get out to people and to businesses and whatnot is a website they have called readyrating.org, which is something where anybody and any business and whatnot could go and answer questions, take like a survey, and determine their emergency preparedness for themselves and whether they have a good emergency plan in place. And and, you know, where the deficiencies might be and sort of help them through the process. So I think it's, I haven't had a chance to go on it yet, but they said it was pretty user-friendly and it doesn't take that long, so I encourage you to check it out, and we might want to talk to like Scott and whatnot about sending that out on like an email, one of our town emails or something.
Or even on social media.
Yeah, because it was one of the things he said he wanted to, you know, sort of like get that out to people. That was LEPC. I will mention, again, Jeff mentioned the SBA event this morning on Pierce Hollow Village. You know, another thing about that too is, it was actually a pretty well-attended event. Like there's, you know, this is a project that the community has always fully supported, and people were interested in hearing about it again today, and there was a presentation on it. So, you know, just reiterate any, you know, we've tried various things, so any new ideas, thinking outside the box, coming up with ways, and I think, you know, trying to find a meeting would be good. And then I will just add to Jeff's comments and thanking Jennifer for her service on this board and service to this community over a number of years. Jennifer is an excellent, dedicated public servant who's always put the interests of this town ahead of everything else in the work she's done. And she'll be missed on our board. And I hope that she will accept our call in the near future when we are looking for people to serve their community once more. So,
Thank you, Jason.
thank you.
You're up.
I have attended none of those meetings, but I would, sorry, being honest. But I would encourage you to please, at the beginning of the new board's formation, to maybe reassess who's going to what meetings and liaison to where, so that there can be a little bit, a little changing of the guards. But to please look after that strategic plan and that commission, and fill that vacancy as soon as you can. Lastly, I would say it's been a privilege to work with you all, and I thank you for your support over the years, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you. Mike?
Parks and Rec is meeting tonight. They're probably done by now, is my bet. But Michael Ganem emailed Jeff and I at about 4 o'clock or so. Well, Jeff got it earlier this morning. I got it at about 4 o'clock, 4:15 today. A plan and a quote for a new playground at Lakeside Park. John Cattell, and I'm just going to read it. John Cattell and his team have completed phase 1, which included the removal of the antiquated equipment, tree, and site work. The project's budgeted, and he gave the account number. He let Dan Colton know that Game Time's on the state bid list. It's the manufacturer and installer of the playground, and he gave their state bid number, and he included the quote. It is in the budget. The quote was for about $27,000 and change. It looks like a beautiful playground. You know, it's a pretty standard playground equipment. If anyone wants to see it, Jeff or I can, I'm sure, forward it on to you. I did get, actually, as I sat here tonight, I asked Michael if the project had been reviewed by the Parks and Rec Commission. He said the project had previously been endorsed by the commission, and they were being presented details tonight. So that's the status, and nothing else to report from Parks and Rec. The EMS has not met since our last meeting. They meet December 3rd, at which I will provide any updates I have to them as they have their last meeting as their currently constituted commission. Are there any updates in terms of I know we got the volunteer call for volunteers. Have we gotten, okay, that's great.
But yeah, they take some time to.
And 'tis the season. I think, I would also urge us, whether or not, as we move forward, I continue to be that liaison, which I'd love to be, that we move with as much speed as possible, so for that January meeting, when that first January meeting, they could start the year running. Region 15, I was not able to attend on Monday, but they continued presenting their regular updates that I had spoken about at the last meeting. The most recent was about new student experiences due to the schedule change. I'm not sure if you have kids in the high school, you know they changed their block schedule again this year. So it's the second time that juniors have been affected by the block schedule change. But I don't have the minutes weren't posted yet, so I wasn't able to speak about it. The next meeting on the 2nd of December, they'll focus on special education, and the report will be on special education. and I encourage people to attend. And I would like to reiterate also to Jennifer, I will miss your looking across from you and seeing you there. But most of all, will miss your grace and your integrity and the service you've given to this town and to the six of us for the last 4 years. So don't let the door hit you on the way out.
And there's cake.
Okay. I'll try to avoid it.
And there's cake,
Mike, will you hold the door?
right?
Are you gonna hold the door?
I will hold the door for her so it doesn't hit it. No, Jennifer knows how I feel about it. She was
Absolutely.
You might want to be careful.
An absolute pleasure to serve with.
Don't take that hole any deeper.
And seriously, no, and full of that, she is an absolute pleasure. And this town is fortunate, and to Jason's point, we'll be calling on you. We'll give you a little break, but
Lose
we'll be
my
calling
number.
on you.
Okay. I wish everybody a good Thanksgiving,
Yes.
and if you're
Likewise.
traveling,
Happy Thanksgiving.
safe travels to the public, patience, and you'll get where you want to go anyway. Any other business? Entertain a motion to adjourn and have cake.
Jennifer,
So moved.
I'll second that motion from Jennifer.
Okay, all in
Seconding.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It carried. Thank you.